Hi everybody, I hope you're doing really well. I hope this is a beautiful day for you. I just wanted to quickly talk about rhododendrons. They're one of my absolute favorite plants. I say that about every plant, but truly, this is one of my favorites. I've been slowly collecting them. I have about half of the ones that I have right here in front of me, and I could not recommend this plant more. So they're in the Ericaceae family. Mine are just finished blooming. Ericaceous plants are basically plants that have bell-shaped flowers. You'll also find your heathers in this family. You'll find your pieris. Pieris is another one that's in this family. This is a plant that really does enjoy acidic conditions. I'll get a little bit more into that later. So the name itself, rhododendron, means rose tree. Rhodos meaning rose and dendros meaning tree. They really truly are trees. They can grow in excess of 30 feet, and you can get really quite stately specimens. If you want to go online and look at a really big rhododendron, you should look up the Ladysmith rhododendron in British Columbia. It is huge. These are incredibly long-lived plants, oftentimes living in excess of 100, 150 years. They're quite diverse. There's over 200 varieties. They're native to all different parts of the world. So they're native to North America, Europe, Asia, Australia, pretty well everywhere. The ones that I'm going to talk about today are the ones that are native to North America. A little bit of information on them as a symbol. There's actually a place in Oregon State in the US that's actually called rhododendron, named after this plant. And it's actually the national emblem of the country of Nepal, too. There I believe they call it gurands. So the red rhododendron is a symbol of Nepal. I'm gonna get into a little, excuse me, I'm gonna get into a little bit more on their culture and care. So something that people often will confuse is azaleas versus rhododendrons. So it's important to know that all rhododendrons do not have to be azaleas. There are plants that are just rhododendron but not azalea. However, all azaleas fall into the category of rhododendrons. And most of the differences are that rhododendrons are always going to be evergreen. They're a lot larger in stature in general, whereas azaleas you can get deciduous ones. The flower clusters are typically more complete and more round in rhododendrons. The pistils are a little bit different. The leaf morphology is a bit more long in rhododendrons as opposed to azaleas. I'll actually give you an azalea just for reference. So this is a Mount St. Helens azalea. I don't know if you can see, it's a little bit less glossy. It's a little bit flatter in the way that it grows. It's a little more woody. That's an example of a deciduous azalea. Whereas these guys here are rhododendrons. So rhododendrons like really acidic conditions. They like anything from about 5 to 6 as their pH value. Even lower than that, even a pH of 4. You can supplement that with coffee grounds, black tea, stuff like that. You know, you want to avoid using anything that's lime heavy, anything that's more alkali. I don't even recommend eggshells as a natural fertilizer for these guys because it raises the pH a little bit more than they would like. Rhododendrons, you're going to get several different issues with rhododendrons, typically kind of midsummer. A big one is Cercospora. You'll get like different leaf miners, you'll get different bacterial leaf spots. Anything that laurel is susceptible to, a rhododendron will be susceptible to. Anything in the Prunus genus, really. I don't know if you can see, I have a big laurel tree right over there, so it basically took all of its disease down into here. New growth is looking really good. So right now we're looking at my plants just after bloom. They're starting to set their new leaves. A lot of people, what they'll do is after they bloom, they'll go to this particular junction. This is where an old spent bloom stalk was, and they'll just pinch it off just as routine pruning to get more of a round bush. Me, I'm not going to do that just because I'm currently air layering my plants, which is basically when you put a wet medium and a rooting hormone on an exposed part of the stem and you try to reproduce a new plant. That's the most successful propagation method for me in rhododendrons. These guys are susceptible to powdery mildew is another thing I will say. So I have several different varieties here. I have Percy Wiseman, which is kind of more of a pale, kind of whitish one. I have Anna Krushki, which is this one that's just fading right now. It's a really nice, beautiful reddish purple. I have Minnetonka, which is in the front. That's a nice lavender colored one. These are all my personal recommendations. They're the ones that have done really well for me. This one here, sorry, this is Anacrushki. This is Nova Zembla. Nova Zembla is a really beautiful dark form. And then I have these guys here. This one's called Firestorm. It's a little bit more disease susceptible, but it's a really beautiful bloom. It persists really for quite a long time. I like kind of more of a gnarly kind of look to my plants, so I am purposefully growing them root bound. They do perform way better in ground, but I really like the kind of muted look of it. It looks almost kind of haunted in a weird way. I don't know, I really like that about them. So if you want a more shapely, compact plant, you can cut them back at around this time of the year, so June getting into July. One thing to be incredibly considerate about is this is where the new flowers for the next year are going to come. So if you are okay with sacrificing your flowers for a couple of years just for, you know, maintaining the overall structural health of the plant, then go for it, but just know that you're kind of sacrificing your flowers for the next year. In my opinion, and I think it's a shared opinion with several other people, best time to prune these guys is to do a relatively hard prune, pruning back 9 inches on mature plants in the midwinter. Any time in between the first frost date and last frost date in your region is kind of a good area to start with, because that way the sap isn't flowing very heavily within the plant. It's in a state of dormancy. It's just less susceptible to shock. And then in the early spring, fertilize, because then it has a chance to rebound and grow its blooms, so then you don't miss out on the compensation of those blooms. If you want a more bushy appearance, which is actually what I did on this air layer here, just because I wanted more branching structure, you can take it back, not back to the furthest most node, but take it back even one more, and then you're going to get a whole bunch of lateral shoots. Typically you'll get 4 to 6. So that's what I did here. And it just greatly increases the structure, and the plant will actually mimic that pattern up. For the next couple of nodes you're going to get extra branching too, which is nice. If you want to really prolong the blooming season of these guys, right as they start to set bloom, I really do recommend adding a little bit of blood meal. Sorry, bone meal. Blood meal works too, but bone meal. Excuse me. Just to supplement some of the core nutrients, because they need that little boost before they start to bloom. Very, very sticky. That's one thing that I have to say. This leaf spot, unfortunately, that leaf's not going to repair itself, but it's totally photosynthetic. It's definitely going to persist on the plant and help it. So yes, it might not be super aesthetically pleasing, but I do recommend keeping it on just for well balance in the plant. You can use a sulfur-based fungicidal application for fungal leaf spots. For bacterial leaf spots, you kind of have to isolate the plants, and if it's particularly bad on a plant and you really care about the aesthetics of that, then I recommend isolating and quarantining it. So this is the Firestorm variety. It's a little bit darker, and that's kind of my introduction to rhododendrons. I think I'll make more videos on these later, because I really quite like them. Some of them are fuzzy. Some of the Pacific Northwest varieties will have leaves that are well in excess of 4 times as long as this. This is quite a dwarfed variety, actually. You can get mounding varieties. You can actually get yellow, white, purple, red, pink, lavender, all sorts of different colors, except I don't think blue. There's even an orange rhododendron. Very, very long-lived. Another thing that I want to say is it has a really beautiful feature when the bark starts to grow out and mature. You get a little bit of dieback, that's normal. These guys are very cold hardy. Cold hardy down to, I would say, even -40. I know people grow these in Manitoba even. If you have rabbits, definitely watch out for girdling. They do like to attack this kind of base. I actually have a little bit of girdling damage here. Once it goes around, you basically have to prune back. If you want to do rejuvenation pruning on these guys, you can prune them back to about 6 to 9 inches. I only recommend that if the plant is rather mature, because it can be a little bit too much of a shock if it's still a juvenile plant that you're dealing with. But really well worthwhile plants. 10 out of 10 recommend them. I find them a little easier than azaleas, actually. Yeah, look at that with the sun shining through. Absolutely gorgeous. And another nice thing native here, and you're in like British Columbia, northern, you know, the Pacific Northwest, this is actually a plant that's native here, which is cool too. Have a good day, you guys, and yeah, stay blessed.